Hello, lovely viewers. You are most welcome to our channel Poetry Online. In this video, we shall be presenting to you the major themes of the book Money Galore by djoleto. Kindly subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get updates on all our new videos. Once again, let us assure you of a very interesting discussion. Get ready for this lesson. Djoleto is a Ghanaian novelist who creates an artistic world. In Money Galore, people by individuals who insatiably and wrongly crave for money, fame, wealth, power, and sex. The novelist seems to be questioning the core values of what society considers admirable as he portrays characters in a tragicomic way. Djoleto, in Money Galore, seems to be vociferous in pointing out to society its immoral acts and behavior. His forthright and fearless approach in satirizing the ills among the clergy, politicians, businessmen and women, ordinary people, and even the youth is perhaps what makes the message of the novel more vivid and inclusive. Djoleto condemns the shameless lifestyles of politicians, priestly unchastity, hypocrisy, deviant sexual behavior, and amorous living. Though these immoral acts usually go unpunished in the fictive works, the novelist leaves the readers in no doubt about the negative effects these acts have on society. Djoleto's main concern in Money Galore is to paint a gloomy picture of how corrupt and money-minded a society can be if its psychology is not properly oriented and firmly grounded on its moral and ethical values like moral uprightness, discipline, chastity, sincerity, and faithfulness. His satirical bat is directed against the counterfeit political and religious leaders who are expected to give society spiritual and moral direction, but who have themselves become architects of moral bankruptcy. The novelist's criticism of this moral decadence is seen in the portrayal of Reverend Dan Opiasese, a bald fair-colored man who also wears trendy and expensive shirts and ties, but finds it difficult to discard old coats and trousers. This is suggestive of his affluent, yet hypocritical lifestyle. He is not fond of clerical garb, though he is an ordained minister of religion. This suggests that Opiasese, a reverend minister, has skeletons hidden in his cupboard as far as his moral life is concerned. The story of Money Galore revolves around the life of a dissatisfied teacher called Abraham Kafu, who teaches history in National Secondary School in Cape Coast. He decides to leave the teaching profession, which he considers not lucrative enough to join politics. Kafu was fortunate enough to contest for the Accra Central Parliamentary seat, which he wins on the ticket of the Liberation Party. On his way to political success, he was introduced to some rich yet dubious and unpatriotic businesswomen who mobilized money, campaigned, and supported him to win. After winning the election, it was now time for Kafu to pay them back for their support during his campaign period. He was suspected, as a Minister of Internal Welfare, to shield their illegal businesses and protect them from the law. This rich market woman, Salamotu and Odofo, made his campaign an intensive one by giving him the money needed for an effective campaign. Kafu's connection with this woman draws him closer to Salamotu, whom he eventually falls in love with and later impregnated. After winning the election, he becomes a Minister of Internal Welfare and uses his power to cow, victimize, and seek revenge for anyone who has in one way or the other offended him. Immediately he resumed office, he removes his rival, Mr. Benji Biase, from the position of the headmaster of National Secondary School and fixed his favorite, the shameless and immoral Reverend Dan Opiasese. After all the corruption, bribery, propaganda, vain promises, immorality, victimization, and irresponsibility, Abraham Kafu was mistakenly killed by his watchman, Bukari, when Kafu was attacked by Ofori Norte. Let's now consider the theme of corruption. Djoleto makes a stand against corruption and brings attention to the fact that people did not care about the way they gained their money. Hence, The novel depicts a category of people that have converted all ethics to meet its desires. These people's love for money justified all the wrong things they did. Money galore transmits a sense of bitterness due to the extreme spread of corruption and bribery, which are universally accepted in Ghana as the only way to prosperity and development. This work discusses the harsh and cruel images of corruption, self interest, and hypocrisy in Ghana and Africa at large, and reflects on the people after independence who believed that the only way to gain power and wealth was to be a liar, a thief, and a selfish person, caring only for his personal interests. Throughout the novel, it is clearly shown that corruption existed heavily in the society. Djoleto uses his novel to show his unpleasantness and disagreement towards the political and social standards of Ghana during the post-colonial era. His rejection of the current values is seen in Benji Biase's character that appears to struggle to preserve his clean soul in the middle of a dirty environment filled with rot. Next is the theme of immorality. The novelist Djoleto provides readers with a brief background of Opia's life, which serves as a guide to measure his moral purity or otherwise. As a priest teacher, he takes sexual advantage of a 17-year-old girl in her first year in training college, attempts to deny responsibility for her pregnancy, but is compelled to marry her to avoid an open scandal. Reverend Opia Sise neither drinks nor smokes in public. We can speculate that he drinks and smokes in secret. The novelist's profuse use of irony and paradox excited readers' sense of humor and disgust for the pretentious and morally bankrupt men of God. Here is a married pastor who has a chorister girl lover, Lydia Johnson Baden. After Reverend Opia has fully satisfied his sexual drives on her, he decides to literally transfer Lydia to Kafu after the Thanksgiving service. He even drives Lydia to Kafu's lodging, where Opia had stocked the place with a selection of expensive drinks. They chatted till about 12 midnight. Reverend Dan Opia Sise insisted that it was too late to drive Lydia home, so he left her with Kafu. Opia shamefully accepts responsibility for any pregnancy that might result from Kafu's illicit affair with Lydia. He confidently intones to Kafu, "Leave that to me, Abraham. Expect nothing." Opia's immoral exploits go beyond the bounds of his congregation in Cape Coast and extend down to Kafu's home in Accra, where he throws all caution to the wind, woos the house girl, Gloria Opoku, ravishes her, impregnates her, attempts and succeeds in aborting the pregnancy. Kafu gets so deeply involved immorally with Odofo, Salamatu, and Mercy to an extent that he impregnates Odofo and Salamatu concurrently. Ironically, this is a man who has been featuring on radio and television programs, preaching more mortification of the flesh and sound moral life. Djoleto's presentation of Kafu and Opia revealed the universal paradox associated with the lives of leaders who appear saintly outwardly, are in the forefront of moral crusades, yet their inner lives exude the stench of rot and putrefaction. The world in the novel is portrayed as stinking when we look at both male and female characters through the lens of morally acceptable behavior. Odofulante, for example, is presented as morally weak to an extent that Oforinote and Niotulate service her, in addition to Kafu's persistent servicing. The portrayal of Odofo reveals the pathetic plight of women whose acquisition of wealth and property does not give them the fulfillment and happiness they desire. These women plot and scheme to win their happiness. On a particular Sunday evening meeting with Kafu in a house, Odofo returns from church and decides to sit on a rocking chair she had bought at an exhibition. Her near nakedness, as she awaits the arrival of Kafu, is suggestive of her seductive moves towards Kafu. In her disappointment and disgust at Oforinote's presence in her house, Odofo forgets to gather her cloth round her properly, and her wonderful body shows in part. The novelist provides the readers a good humorous meal. This promiscuous and avaricious desire of Odofo portrays her as immoral. Salamutu is another character representative of this sexual craze in this fictive society. Djoleto presents her as a woman who drinks strong alcoholic beverages such as brandy and whiskey, smokes, and prefers men who drink whiskey to men who drink beer. She is not contented sexually with one man, a dignified but supercilious queen. Very much in control of herself, she allows herself to be serviced by Oforinoti, Neo Tulati, Mr. Mills Blankson, Dr. Mills Blankson, and impregnated by Kafu. Amuja Leso stirs the reader's imagination with the above issues and questions the kind of legacy such a society can leave behind for its younger and unborn generations. The novelist provides realistic means in subtly dealing with the problem of morality in his work. Reverend Dan Opiasi's immoral and hypocritical deeds are exposed at the near-death and later confession of Gloria, who is saved from societal ridicule and embarrassment. Mr. Mills Blankson, the novelist, designs the loss of his favorite and only son, Atukwe, under a very bizarre and shameful circumstances. During the collapse of Atukwe walls, the novelist's choice of death, which is the favorite and only son of Mr. Mills Blankson, portrays his disgust for the likes of Mr. Blankson, who defy moral decorum in the African society, and frowns upon a father and a son diving into the canon of the same woman. As for Odofo, Salamotu, and Mercy, the novelist frustrates their efforts to continue propagating their immoral deeds by exterminating their object of desire, personified in the protagonist, and rendering their children fatherless. Kafu's shameless and tragic death at the close of the novel is perhaps a powerful reminder to society that humans need to be discreet in regulating their moral life in dispensing the power they wield. Next is the theme of hypocrisy. The novel, Money Galore, raises issue about the lifestyle of African elites or bourgeoisie who assumed power after the majority of African countries became independent. Djoleto highlights the hypocrisy of the elites in an attempt to portray themselves as the real nation builders, when in the real sense they are the wreckers of the nation. The novel is about the tragedy of African countries when they got the opportunity to rule themselves. Many countries after independence have been struggling to deal with the myriad of problems such as corruption, poverty, and mismanagement. African leaders that took over power aped their colonial masters by plundering and feeding fat on the resources of the continent. This novel reveals the hypocrisy of African leaders who always play on the intelligence of the masses, pontificating that they are doing their best to change the fortunes of the country. The vivid description of Minister Kafu and Reverend Dan Opiasese and their flamboyant lifestyle foregrounds the hypocrisy of the elites. Next is the theme of disillusionment. This novel was written at a time African writers were examining the circumstances of Africa after political independence and the challenges these new African states were plagued with. After political independence in Ghana, a totally unexpected state of extreme disappointment and despair appeared, all of which was mainly due to the new unsatisfying economic, social, moral, and political circumstances that surprisingly took place. The new set of African leaders, who were a recreation of their former colonialists with all their Western lifestyle and perspective, held power. The only thing the new leaders cared about was their own selfish interests and desires at the expense of the Africans, stirred with corruption and dishonesty, just like white colonialists before them. Consequently, Africans are still living in an endless misery. Thus, freedom was not a clear fact. Europe continued its colonization in an indirect way, at least politically, through globalization, humanitarian aid, and its own made corrupt politicians that were left behind. Africans became even more disillusioned after the so-called independence did not bring the much-needed comfort, liberty, freedom, and development that was expected. The unprecedented political, economic, and social chaos entrapped Africans in the corrupt governments that were controlled by tyrants, a political elite with materialistic spirits. In this masterpiece, Money Galore, the Ghanaian writer djoleto harshly criticized the wrong political path taken by African leaders after political independence. The very people the Africans were fighting to free themselves from their bondage of colonialism and captivity, in a sense, did better than the newly elected African leaders with their serious, greedy, selfish, and dangerous materialistic spirits. Next is the theme of brutality, victimization, oppression, and selfishness. This is the act of making somebody suffer unfairly because you do not like them or their opinion or something they have done. There are several instances of victimization in this novel. Abraham Kafu immediately dismisses the headmaster of National Secondary School as a way of showing his revenge and disgust for his way of managing the school. We also come across the craze for materialism. Money Galore delves into the vanity and dangers of ill-gotten wealth and material possession. The characters in the novel are driven by their burning desire for money, leading to a variety of moral compromises and negative consequences. Djoleto critiques the obsession with materialism and highlights the emptiness that accompanies the pursuit of wealth and the fate that awaits such people. Lastly, we come across the theme of betrayal. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video.